With that down, let's move on and talk about this, shall we? One of the big questions that we've had going into Fantastic Four is how well is the box office going to do, right? That's obviously one of the questions we have, because remember, box office equals people. I often get criticized. People say, John, why do you care so much about box office? Well, don't you care about if people got interested in a movie? Yeah. Don't you care if people actually got motivated enough to go out to a movie? Yeah. Don't you care to know if a marketing campaign was effective or not? Yeah. Well, that's all box office. Box office tells us if a marketing campaign got people motivated. Box office tells us if the general movie-going audience was interested in the property. Box office tells us, like, all worlds of information. That's why I care. So I've been very interested in finding out, how will Fantastic Four do? And it do well, ladies and gentlemen. It do well. Because according to the Hollywood Reporter, Fantastic Four First Steps had a $24.4 million opening preview night. And that is the best preview night of the year. I want to put this into perspective for us, okay? I want to put this in perspective. When we go over and look at this, when you look at the opening Thursday night numbers of the biggest movies that have come out this year, Minecraft, which by the way went on to make $162 million in its opening weekend, had a $10.5 million preview night. Thunderbolts, which went on to have a $74 million opening weekend, had an $11.5 million opening preview night. That's Thursday nights. Captain America 4, which went on to have an $88.8 million opening weekend, started with a $12 million preview night. Lilo and Stitch, which went on to have a $146 million opening weekend. And by the way, Lilo and Stitch is the first billion-dollar film of the year. It had a $14.5 million preview night. Then Superman came. And Superman, for a couple of weeks, held the top spot as the biggest opening preview night of the year with $22.5 million opening preview night. How would Fantastic Four do? Fantastic Four beat it. And Fantastic Four is now the biggest preview night, the busiest Thursday night of the year so far, with $24.4 million made on its preview night last night. Now, for a little bit of extra perspective on this, that $24.4 million it just made in its preview night is not just the biggest preview night of the year, but it's the biggest preview night in all of movies since Deadpool 3 came out. And it, obviously you can see there, had a ridiculous preview night of $38.5 million on its way to $211 million opening weekend. Okay. Now, some people, I get it, might be a little bit confused by some of those numbers, saying, well, wait a minute. So if Fantastic Four had a bigger preview night than Lilo and Stitch, which went on to have a $146 million opening weekend, that means that Fantastic Four is going to have way over a $146 million opening weekend, right? Not necessarily. I want to point out a couple of numbers on this list here. All right. First of all, Minecraft had a $10.5 million Thursday night, $162 million opening weekend. Lilo and Stitch, $14.5 million preview night, $146 million opening weekend. Here's the difference. With movies like Fantastic Four and Superman, us comic book movie fans tend to rush out as early as we can to see these movies, right? Again, that's why Superman has a $22.5 million preview night and 125, so a much bigger preview night than Lilo and Stitch or Minecraft, but not as big of an overall opening weekend as Lilo and Stitch and Minecraft. Why? Because people who wanted to see Superman are going to go out on Thursday night to see Superman. People who want to see Fantastic Four are going to run out to go see Fantastic Four on Thursday night and Friday and Saturday. Yes, for true for sure. But families going and taking their kids to see Lilo and Stitch, families going and taking their kids to see Minecraft are not necessarily running out to go see it on Thursday night. They're probably going to wait till it's a non-school night. They're probably going to wait for a Friday night, a Saturday night, or Saturday matinee, Sunday matinee, that sort of thing. So that's why if you're looking at these numbers and thinking, wait a minute, how did Minecraft have such a small opening weekend or small opening day compared to Superman, and yet had a bigger opening weekend as a whole compared to Superman? Well, because people who wanted to go see Superman were rushing out to see it Thursday night, and families and people wanting to go out and see Minecraft weren't rushing out to see it on Thursday night. They were waiting for a non-school night. They were waiting for a family day. They were waiting for a matinee on Saturday, that sort of thing. So if you're looking at this list, don't think this means necessarily that Fantastic Four is going to open to over $160 million. It won't. But you know what? They were just projecting $120 million opening weekend for Fantastic Four. $120 million opening weekend. I do think it's going to break that. I think Fantastic Four here is going to end up beating Superman with its $125 million opening weekend. Now, it only beats Superman by $2 million on its Thursday night, but I do think this is going to have great legs. And again, while Fantastic Four does have some negative baggage it's carrying around with it with the failure of all the other Fantastic Four movies, and Marvel isn't exactly firing on all cylinders, and Marvel's rep, if you say, isn't as good as it was back in phases 1, 2, and 3, the rep of Marvel is still definitely much healthier than the rep of DC. Because going into Superman, DC's reputation was absolute garbage. Like absolute total garbage. The entire movie-going audience had completely abandoned DC, all that kind of stuff, right? Where you can't say that with Marvel. Yeah, Marvel, we all have been maybe a little bit dissatisfied with how they've been lately. They're certainly not as good as they used to be. But their reputation, they have not completely lost the audience. I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine made well over $1 billion. So it's in a healthier place.
Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. You know, it feels like workplace stress is higher than ever these days. And I was just reading that about 61% of the global workforce is dealing with above normal levels of stress. And honestly, it's not surprising. When you're stuck in endless Zoom meetings, juggling deadlines, or just trying to keep your head above water, it adds up. Now, sure, a quick vacation sounds nice, but let's be real. It's not a long-term fix. What's helped me is building small wellness habits. For me, it's things like getting outside in the sun for a few minutes or squeezing in a brisk walk during breaks. But for a lot of people, sometimes that's just not enough, and that's where therapy can really help. BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform with over 30,000 therapists who've already helped over 5 million people worldwide. Their app is super convenient. You can meet with a therapist with just a click, and if it's not the right fit, you can switch therapists anytime. And just listen to the user reviews. The BetterHelp app has a 4.9 out of 5 from over 1.7 million reviews. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/Campea. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Campea.
So, yeah, I think we're talking about Fantastic Four having a north of 130, maybe even north of $135 million opening. King Daddy Goat is saying in the live chat there, guessing 132.5. I don't think that's far off. And if it is 132, that would make, and we talked about this a little bit on the show yesterday, if Fantastic Four hits $132 million on its opening weekend or higher, that will make it the biggest opening weekend for a Marvel film since the end of 2022. The only Marvel film that will have had a bigger opening weekend in those years will have been Deadpool and Wolverine, and that's it. It will beat Guardians of the Galaxy 3. It'll beat out Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which I think came out in 2023. Anyway, it'll beat out Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which had $118 million opening weekend. It'll beat out Thunderbolts. It'll beat out Captain America: Brave New World. It'll beat out the Marvels, clearly. The only Marvel film since 2022 that will have had a bigger opening weekend is Deadpool and Wolverine. And nobody expected Fantastic Four to have the opening weekend of a Deadpool and Wolverine. That wasn't going to happen. So the question is, why is Fantastic Four having this level of success? I think there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, while it in context is absolutely impressive that it is the biggest preview opening day of the year of any movie anywhere, the fact that it's even beat out Superman on those preview nights, all that is impressive. But I do want to remind us all that it is, by Marvel standards, just doing their job. And that's good. By Marvel standards, which Marvel itself has not been living up to lately, but by Marvel standards, it's good. It's good. By everybody else's standards, it's great. It's the top opening preview night of the year. But why has it been able to do that when none of the other movies have? Well, I think a couple of things. One, I think Disney and Marvel's strategy to pivot away from their trailers and instead pivot to putting out clips over the last number of weeks was a major win for them. The trailers for Fantastic Four First Steps had not been great. They'd been okay. They were all right. They didn't do anything to lessen my excitement for Fantastic Four, but they certainly weren't doing anything to increase the excitement of the average moviegoer for the movie, I don't think. And at some point, it feels like Marvel understood that. They got it. The trailers aren't working. And then you guys will know, about a month ago, they pivoted to, instead of putting out new teasers, they started actually putting out clips from the movie. You know, I think the first one was a fuller scene of the dinner scene where the family's sitting down together and Ben's like, "You're pregnant," right? That felt so much better than even the clips of that scene that we saw in the trailers. Like this, watching it as a coherent scene, it just felt really, I remember me and Rob talking on the show. When they put out that clip of the movie, Rob and I were both like, okay, now we feel the chemistry between the characters. Now they feel like a family. Now this feels like conversations I would want to watch. Because when they were just using segments of it in the trailers, I never got any of that. Then they put out the scene of Silver Surfer showing up, which again, we saw clips of, like just fragments of in the trailers, but they showed the more full clip of her showing up, going, you know, "I herald his beginning, I herald your end. Go celebrate, hold your loved ones dear, for your time is short," blah, blah, blah. Like, and that whole scene felt so much better than what they had shown us in the trailers. It felt cohesive. You felt the ominous presence of the Silver Surfer. You felt the fear. You felt the stakes by putting out that clip. It just felt way better. And then they put out another clip or two after that. The point is that Marvel did a great thing recognizing that the trailers themselves were not doing it. The trailers themselves were not accomplishing that. They needed to pivot, and they did. So I think that's been exceptionally well. The other reason I think that this has worked so well is goes back to, you know, years now, is the casting. The casting was great. And let me take a second and talk about Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards. I loved the iteration of Reed Richards in this. Without giving any spoilers away, this is a Reed Richards who, number one, knows he's the smartest man in the world. But knowing he's the smartest man in the world does not give him an ego. The opposite of true. The opposite of that is true. Reed's the smartest man in the world, and he feels like he's not smart enough to fulfill that job as being the smartest man in the world. You know, when you're the smartest man in the world, you can either develop an ego about that, kind of like how Tony Stark has a really cool ego, and like, even dead, I'm the hero. You know, being a super smart guy, you can develop an ego. But instead of developing an ego, you feel this heaviness on Reed in this movie. And Pedro Pascal performs the crap out of it. There's a heaviness to Reed that I'm not doing the job of smartest man in the world good enough. Being that smart comes with the curse. They don't say this in the movie. I'm not spoiling anything. I'm just saying this is the feeling I get. Being that smart comes along with the curse of knowing just how much you don't know. True ignorance isn't not knowing a lot. True ignorance is thinking you know more than you do. That's true ignorance. Ignorance isn't not knowing a lot. It's thinking you know more than you actually do. And the curse that Reed has in this Fantastic Four, in this iteration of Reed Richards, is that he is so smart that he's constantly aware of all the things he doesn't know. And it's the things he doesn't know that scares him. And the way Pedro Pascal plays that, the way Pedro Pascal portrays that in the movie is absolutely next level. And I don't know that I can think of 4 actors who could play this version of Reed Richards better than Pedro Pascal just played it. Vanessa Kirby as Sue was unbelievably great, and the dynamic between Reed and Sue was fantastic. Eben Moss-Bachrach, the Emmy award-winning actor, as Ben, next level, man. Absolutely next level. I loved him in this so much. And, you know, Eddie Munson as Johnny Storm was great. And again, all of it worked. The chemistry between Reed and Johnny in this, brilliant. The chemistry between Ben and Sue, brilliant. The chemistry that I really loved besides between Reed and Sue was the chemistry between Johnny and Ben. I thought that was great too. And so I think the marketing shift was a big reason for it. I think the casting was a bit of a reason for the success that they've had with that opening night. We'll see how good the success stretches into the whole weekend. If it does or not, we'll find out. And the third thing that I think is the isolated nature of it. And I may be right or wrong about that, but I remember when Ray and me, Ann, and Ray were walking out of the theater, one of the things Ray said, and this holds true for how I feel about a lot of comic book movies, he said it felt really good watching this movie and not have to wonder, why isn't Thor coming to help? Why isn't Doctor Strange coming to help? Why aren't the Dora Milaje coming to help? Where's Ant-Man when you need him? Hey, this is in New York. Where's Spider-Man? Like, it felt so good again watching one of these movies where the Fantastic Four are unique in their world. That used to be the way all comic book movies were. Comic book movies used to be, until the MCU really came around and popularized it, all comic book movies where you had this hero and the hero was unique in the world because there were no other like them. In this world of the Fantastic Four, there's the Fantastic Four. They are unique in the world. There's not 20 superheroes on the roof of every 7-Eleven patrolling the streets for crime. They're unique in their world. And while I love my shared cinematic universes, absolutely, it feels really good once in a while. This is one of the reasons why I love Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson's The Batman. It feels good every once in a while to go back to a story, a superhero story, where your hero or heroes are actually unique in the world they're in. Now, that being said, one of the other great things about this Fantastic Four is that it feels like this Fantastic Four is going to fit in beautifully with a larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. And this is what I said to Anne coming out. I said, you know what? The other thing is that this Fantastic Four, I feel like they could be, I legitimately feel this Fantastic Four could lead the universe of heroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I really feel like they could lead. I feel like if this Fantastic Four were in the MCU, I feel like all the other heroes in the MCU would look up to them. It kind of felt the way like it does in the comics. And so I think that had something to do with its success as well, is that you could kind of feel that a little bit from the marketing and all that kind of stuff they had leading up to it. And the other thing is maybe the promise of a first even remotely comic accurate Galactus. They took some liberties with Galactus, good ones, but he's not 100% comic accurate. And yeah, man. It was just so well done. And that opening night. Okay, so let's go back to the numbers for a second here. So now that we know that it's the biggest opening night of the year, biggest opening night of any Hollywood film since Deadpool and Wolverine over a year ago, right? No other movie has had a bigger opening preview night since Deadpool and Wolverine than Fantastic Four. Okay, how big will the opening weekend numbers be? Will they stay on pace with the Superman numbers just a little bit ahead of it and it'll open to like 130, 135? Do you think it's going to suffer from a weak weekend and maybe come in under Superman? Do you think it'll be a lot more? I'm going to ask all you guys in the live chat. Throw in your number. Amin is saying right now 134. How big do you think when we get the final numbers on Monday morning or late Saturday afternoon, we get the final numbers? How big do you think it's going to be? Colin Z is also thinking it's going to beat Superman, 130. Mark W is saying 136. Sci-Fi Extremist is going even higher, saying 145. Woo! Mr. I is going way higher, saying 169. We got a couple people saying 152. So some of you are thinking it's going to keep pace with just ahead of Superman with that 130 range. Some of you are saying the 150, 160 range. It's going to be interesting to see. Got a couple people saying into the 140s. Patrick is saying 147. Vegas Disney RTV is saying 140. What will it do? Here's my prediction. I'm going to stick with 135, which is higher than I initially thought it was going to be. But I think it's going to pace ahead of Superman. It's going to be 135, which, again, at 135, that will make it, I believe, the third biggest opening weekend of the year. I don't think it's going to be bigger than Lilo and Stitch. Like, I don't think it's going to break 146. It's not impossible, though. Not impossible. So I believe it's definitely not going to catch Minecraft's opening weekend number of 162.7. I don't quite think it'll catch Lilo and Stitch at 146. So I think ultimately we're looking at about a $135 million opening weekend range, which again would make it, I think the second biggest opening weekend since 2022 for Marvel, and the third biggest opening weekend of the year. Now, if it can climb over that 146, it suddenly becomes the second biggest opening weekend of the year. Anyway, guys, question is, what do you think about the performance of Fantastic Fours on its opening night? It's by a significant margin the biggest of the year, surpassing Superman. What do you think that means for its overall opening weekend box office? And what do you attribute that success to? Whatever you guys think, jump down into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.